Good afternoon. I guess we might as well start. I apologize for the late start. I'd like to welcome everybody to the monthly local emergency planning committee meeting. And just to reiterate, again, I apologize for the late start. One of the issues we have is parking at this fire station and this training facility. And when we come here, you can park on the right-hand side of King Street and not the left-hand side, and keep the walkways clear if possible. And if not, if you have to find spots within this parking lot on King Street, or worst comes to worst, come over here and find a spot, or across the street in the telephone building. So again, I apologize. But I'd like to start off just by saying we're more than halfway through our hurricane season. We've been very, very fortunate. We haven't had any incidents, and hopefully we won't until November. We'll be fortunate. Had the opportunity to attend a Coast Guard sponsored tabletop exercise a couple weeks ago, and that kind of coordinates. I can talk a little bit about it, but I think I'd rather have our guest speaker for today come up and speak about it a little bit, and also tell us a little bit about the Coast Guard and their capabilities of how they can help us out. And I hope you can talk about that exercise, Justin. If not, I will. But we'd like to introduce Chief Longville from the Coast Guard Woods Hole Station.
Okay, good afternoon.
Thank you.
First of all, I'm gonna go over some things specific to the Coast Guard station as I kind of go through this PowerPoint. And I apologize for not, for not having maybe as much information as folks are looking for with this, but I'm just going to provide an overview. I'm the officer in charge down there. I just got there the middle of June, and so essentially what that means is that I operate a police and a fire department down there on the water. Okay, essentially. From the federal perspective. So what our area consists of is, if you guys can just kind of visualize, from New Bedford to Hyannis and all the way down to the southern end of the vineyard. So all those waters that kind of encompass those two eastern-western boundaries are our responsibility. I'm just going to flip through here as we go through. So this, for many of you probably know, we're down in Woods Hole in Little Harbor. What I'm required to provide is one full-time response boat to answer any types of calls for assistance, calls or requests from assistance from other government agencies, but particularly the boating public in and around the waters that we're responsible for. We do fall under Sector Southeast New England, which is kind of our larger umbrella of command, leadership. Captain Gifford's the captain of the port. Many of you have probably heard his name. Or have seen him at different exercises that I think we've all been part of. So, next slide, please. Okay, so full-time. We're staff of the crew of 26. Most of us have licenses. There's a small portion of us that don't. We're divided into two duty sections. Essentially, the folks stand 2 days on, 2 days off, essentially working 15 days a month or 180 days a year. Okay. We have what we call relief days down there, kind of a roll call muster, Monday, Wednesday, Friday. It's when the other folks come in to assume the duties and responsibilities of the station and our response posture. We have 3 boats, but I'm only required in staff to provide one that's operational 24/7. We're level 1, basically ports, waterways, coastal security. This is a mission that we've kind of adopted after 9/11. Many of you are probably familiar with it, and really what it means for this area is it means that we have a heightened sense of awareness, sense of duty to provide armed security and armed patrols in and around areas that there are lots of people, so large concentrations of people. So we say, where could that be? And for us, that means the areas in and around the ferry terminals and on the ferries themselves. What we consider to be a high capacity passenger vessel is a vessel that's able to carry more than 500 people or 500 or more people. And we all know many of the vessels that are operating between Woods Hole and Martha's Vineyard and Hyannis and Nantucket are able to do that. So just some heightened sense of awareness, some different requirements for the Coast Guard, what we're able to do, what we're required to do, and that sort of thing. So there's been some other government agencies that have helped us with that mission. And kind of one of the caveats for them to be able to do that is that they're trained by some of our folks for some on-water tactics. Okay, so currently the people that are trained to do that are the environmental police, the Oak Bluffs Police, Fire Department, and the Vineyard Haven Harbor Master Fire Department's office. So obviously we we don't do it alone, and I know you guys, none of your agencies do it alone. It's a partnership and it's a combined effort. So that's really what's driving that mission and the success of that mission. So we're a multi-mission unit, okay? So in addition to ports, waterways, and coastal security, some of our fundamental Coast Guard missions that we do, law enforcement, search and rescue, safety and security, that still kind of falls under the PWCS mission, environmental protection, and then verification of aids to navigation. Now we have our own aids to navigation team. It's also located down in Woods Hole, and then we have some kind of heavy lift, offshore and coastal aids to navigation units. And for this area, they're located in Newport, Rhode Island. So the Cutter Juniper, the Cutter Willow, and the Cutter Ida Lewis, they're all over in Newport, and they have different areas of responsibility, but essentially from the southern tip of Jersey up all the way up to the U.S.-Canada border and out to 200 miles. So next slide, please. All right, so our AOR, area responsibility, 200 miles of water and over 400 miles of coastline. 4 different bodies of water, Nantucket Sound South, Nantucket Sound North, Vineyard Sound, and Buzzards Bay. We divide these areas up for, I guess, for purposes of allocating our resources and coordinating our patrols, but essentially it's just 3, you know, that is known by folks that use the waterway. So let me see, next slide, please. All right, so there you go. That's just a good visual picture of the waters that we're responsible for. To the north side of Buzzards Bay there, if anybody's wondering, Station Cape Cod Canal kind of covers that area north of that red line. And then out to the west in Vineyard Sound, Station Menemsha covers over to the area west of New Bedford. And then to the east here, it's basically a line that's drawn basically straight through Nantucket Sound, and Chatham takes the northern side of Nantucket Sound, and the station out of Nantucket takes the southern portion of that area. So next slide, please. All right, 2 different types of boats. 41-foot utility boat. Most of them were built in the late 70s and the early 80s. They're being replaced by the 45-foot response boat mediums. We are getting at least one this spring and probably another one to follow summer of 2013. They're really platforms that the Coast Guard needs, right? We should have had these platforms a number of years ago, but we're getting them now, and we need to take advantage of the, you know, the increased flexibility that they allow us. So, fantastic platforms, really good for, you know, kind of keeping up with our mission as it's changed over the years. The 41s are fantastic, and they still are good for most of our response requirements, but the 45s for crew comfort, for different capabilities with different electronics, you know, and just for being out there in conditions maybe that the 41 is no longer the best platform to be able to complete the mission with. So, response boat small. These are 25s, kind of orange. A lot of people think that they have air-filled sponsons around the outside. That's just really just a hard foam cell. A lot of those were built right after 9/11. They were being built up until about 5 years ago, and they are slowly being replaced by another similar platform. And you know, that replacement isn't happening as quickly as the 45 or the 41 to 45 replacement, but it is happening over the next 3 to 5 years. So you know, the 25s that we have are still, although many of them are almost 10 years old, they're still very capable, and they're still, I would say they're updated to keep up with some of the demands that we need them to keep up with, you know, in these times. So very fast, very maneuverable, just not good in any type of sea state. What I mean by that is really anything over about 2 or 3 feet. You start to get huge limitations with speed, maneuverability, capability, safety, all that stuff. So next slide, please. All right, so it's just some of the specs on our 41s. 26 knots, essentially 30 miles an hour. Significant range, 300 nautical miles, 8-foot seas, 30 knots of wind. And that's about what we see in this area. I mean, certainly offshore we get huge seas, and in other areas of Block Island Sound, Rhode Island Sound, south of the Vineyard, we get huge seas. But you know, there may only be a couple of days out of the entire year that we're seeing seas greater than 8 feet. Now we routinely see winds greater than 30 knots, and that is often our most limiting factor, is our winds. So just something to consider. Yeah, to 100 gross tons, draft to 5 feet. So sometimes in some portions of our AOR, in and around some of the bays on the southern part of the Cape, sometimes that draft restricts us a little bit, but that's when we just take the 25. So the good thing about the 45s that are coming to replace this boat is their draft is essentially the same as our 25s. And they're all jet drive, so essentially on the bottom there's nothing. So there's no huge, I mean, it's never okay to bump bottom, but I guess if you were going to, the less appendages that you had, meaning propellers, struts, rudder posts, any of that stuff, the better. So it's kind of it's a better thing about the 45. So we have dewatering equipment. We no longer have firefighting equipment. You know, really the Coast Guard has changed its posture to, we've always been in the business of saving lives, I guess, but we've become less focused on saving property, putting out fires, doing that sort of thing, because really there's professionals that are trained to do that, and I would argue that at one point we were, but I think because of just the changing demands of the maritime community, we've just kind of gone away from that over the years. So next slide, please. It's just a 25. You know, typically our boats are underway with more than the minimums. So you saw the minimum on the 41 should have been 3. Same minimum on this platform here, but you know, routinely we're underway with 4, 5, 6 people. And part of the reason for that is because we're always getting new folks, and we always need to train those new folks. Okay, we rotate out pretty significantly every year. Okay, usually up to 8 to 10 people transfer out of the station every year, and when you're talking about only 26 or 30 people, that's a huge percentage lost. So we're always underway with more people because you always should be training your replacement, and that's really key to our long-term success. So, questions on that? Questions on anything so far? Nothing? Okay, next slide please. All right, so this is just dewatering and some rescue equipment here that we decided was worthwhile to put in the slide. P6 pump is what we carry on the 41, and depending on the mission we'll carry on the 25. 250 gallons a minute, pretty standard dewatering pump and very reliable dewatering pump. Able to run for 2.5 hours at 12-foot lift, so be able to lift water out of a compartment essentially 12 feet down. So able to be floated over to a boat that's taken on water. It's in a watertight, airtight aluminum canister. Pretty effective, pretty effective. So these are also, a variation of this is also dropped from our helicopters and some of our aircraft as well, the vessels that are 200 plus miles offshore that have taken on water. So Stokes litter, I mean, this is something that most of us should be relatively familiar with. It's not something that we use frequently at all, but certainly water rescue situations, severely injured, incapacitated folks, lined with a mesh netting to aid in body recovery situations involving long-term exposure. So I guess that's all I need to say about that. Next slide, please. All right, surface swimmer ops. Know that, I can't remember the name of the fishing vessel that just sank, not just sank, but sank when I was leaving Station Woods Hole in 2005, down off of Katuitt area. Guy was a squid fisherman, known for fishing by himself and coming around to make his turn back to Woods Hole. The boat just took a funny roll and it ended up rolling over. And the interesting part of that scenario is that the way that the boat laid on the bottom, the door that was up and accessible was chained shut, and the one that was down and would have been accessible had the boat been laying the other way was the only one that was open. So just kind of a weird set of circumstances that surrounded that. The reason that I bring surface swimmer ops up is because I was the first Coast Guard asset on scene, and there was like 30 other fishing boats. And the reoccurring question that came up is I hope you have divers, or where are your divers, right? And this just goes back to, we don't dive, first of all. We're not trained to do that, and that's not our mission even with our helicopters. Surface swimmer operations are the last resort for our boats. We have trained surface swimmers, but essentially what they're trained to do is just assist folks that are already floating, or already accessible in a boat, okay? This situation, this gentleman was not accessible. and this was not something that we were trained to do or to assist with. So it's very important for the public to know that we don't provide dive assistance or underwater assistance in any way. I guess the only caveat to that rule is that if we could reach into some sort of a compartment or a hold, say in an overturned smaller boat, and we could feel something, essentially that would be the limitation to what we were able to assist with. Does that make sense? Okay. Next slide. Non-distress situations. So essentially over the last 10 years, our policy for rescue and assistance has been written by the folks that now make a living doing that, okay? So who knows who I'm talking about? Right, CETO, Towboat US, Baywatch, those types of entities, okay? And they have essentially provided enough guidance to give them the flexibility to make a living, but to also give us the room to also make decisions in distress situations to be able to respond, okay? I think we have a great working relationship with those people, and we understand the importance of allowing them to assist in non-distress situations, okay? Historically, when these companies didn't exist, we would respond to these situations, and essentially, if the boat met the criteria, we would be able to, in some cases, put a line on them and pull them off of the rocks or pull them off the sandbar or whatever the case may be. That is something that I'm not going to say that we never do, but it really, a special set of circumstances has to exist in order for us to do that. 9 times out of 10, we're going to be worried about the people that are on board, getting them off, and then giving them the opportunity to make an arrangement or a contract with some of these local commercial assistance providers. Okay. Next. All right, so we are going to go over this large-scale drill scenario that we had the other day. It was titled Operation Summer Shield, and it took place up at the Seacrest Resort, and this happened last week. In my opinion, it was a fantastic tabletop exercise that involved a really good partnership of a lot of other state and local government agencies. I think we all came away from that day with with a better sense of what everybody does, and then kind of a better sense of how would we prioritize our mission if something like this was to happen. So thanks for everybody that participated. I talked to Paul Murphy earlier, who coordinated the exercise, and he said, please just extend my thanks to the folks that were involved in that. Because I think we all gathered a lot when we all left the Seacrest that day with regard to what would we do if this actually happened. So it involves one of the steamship ferries, the newest ferry, the Island Home. And the Island Home was on a trip between Woods Hole and Oak Bluffs, or the Vineyard, we can just say, for the purposes of this discussion. And it was transiting with 1,066 passengers and crew on board. It was 1,050 something passengers and I think 11 crew. Unknown number of, I couldn't find anywhere in the flyer the number of vehicles, but my understanding that it had full vehicle decks. And it was essentially on its, on just one of its many transits back and forth between Woods Hole and the Vineyard. It happened on a busy summer day in the middle of the summer, and as we all know, in that particular body of water, as narrow as it is, there's a number of vessels that are always transiting that area. So basically what happened is that loud explosions were reported from surrounding vessels in Nantucket Sound, okay? And so as you guys can imagine, reports started pouring in through the Coast Guard, right through on 16, and then through some of our local 911 centers. So there's one on Martha's Vineyard, and then there's also one for Barnstable County. Am I correct with that? Okay. So that's the scenario right there. Okay. So loud explosions, not very much detail going on right there. So we can go to the next slide. And so what we did essentially for this tabletop is when we all got there, we were given name tags, and we were all divided into groups. Okay. And so we would get an initial bit of information about the scenario, and then our working group would go discuss the specific actions of that group. And then we'd come back into this conference room, and there would be a representative for each group, and we'd kind of go over what that group felt was the most important thing, or their most important job based on the information that they had, okay? So initial actions and response, I think I was on the on-water rescue group, and some of the things that we came up with is recovery of the people in the water and flow of information by bystanders, okay? It's gonna be 1 million bystanders there. Everybody, I think we came to the determination that everybody's gonna wanna help, but I think when they start to realize the gravity of the situation, they're gonna realize that maybe not everybody is able to help, right? So, flow of information by bystanders. Flow of information, like I said, is going to go through 911. It's also going to come across VHF 16, probably through cell phones to 911. You know, folks may be calling our office directly. And so some of the response assets that are going to come are vessels from my station, Station Woods Hole. An aircraft is going to be launched from Air Station Cape Cod. It was briefed that the Coast Guard cutter Hammerhead, which is one of our 3 cutters down in Woods Hole, is underway kind of in western Vineyard Sound. Falmouth Fire Department's going to respond, Falmouth Harbor Master, State Police, FBI, Environmental Police, Oak Bluffs Police, Vineyard Haven Harbor Master, and other ferries, etc. Because I believe there was, there's still, during this scenario, there's still other ferries that are either on their route or finishing their route at the time that this thing starts to happen. So some of the initial things that are very important with our structure is the establishment of an on-scene commander, okay? And in most cases, it's going to be the Coast Guard. But until we get on scene, it may be a harbor master vessel or a fire department boat or just somebody else, okay? So establishment of an on-scene commander is very, very important, okay? Central drop-off location for victims. We kind of decided collectively as a group that as people are recovered, they're going to be brought to the vineyard, they're going to be brought to Falmouth, but we're going to do our best to try to set up and broadcast that the central drop-off location for victims was going to be Woods Hole and the Coast Guard base. The reason that we determined that is just because of the, I guess the minimal flow of vessel traffic in and out of there on any given summer day is not very much. It's not like Falmouth Harbor. It's not like Oak Bluffs on the Vineyard. It's not like Vineyard Haven. Essentially, it's our boats and the dozen or so boats that are on moorings in there. So that would be the best drop-off location. Radio frequency to communicate on. We are not on any type of 800 megahertz or other frequencies that some of the other government agencies are working on. And what we took away from that is what can we do better to bridge that gap. And all I can say is that we're working on that. Particularly for this area. I know some of the stations in Rhode Island are already making progress to do that and are able to do that, at least with some of the other on-water entities pretty well. So a person accountability system. Okay, so vessels departing with victims must check out with the on-scene commander and check in with the shoreside awaiting emergency responders. Okay, so wherever that may be. I think collectively we agreed that there are probably going to be emergency responders on the Vineyard in Vineyard Haven and Oak Bluffs, as well as probably in Falmouth Harbor as well. Although Woods Hole is going to be the central point, I still thought that as a group collectively we agreed that there will also still be some shoreside assistance available in those other places. So next slide, please. So then we needed to figure out, so this kind of progressed over the course of about 5 hours, okay? So what we needed to figure out is that once our initial actions were taken, the ferry slowly started to drift towards a shoal. The situation, if there is such a thing, kind of became stabilized, and the ferry was going to sit in one spot. Because with the explosions, the ferry started to take on water, different dynamics started to affect the scenario here. And we needed to figure out what our long-term plan was going to be, kind of for success and for closure of this tabletop. So I think we agreed that continue of recovery of the people in the water, establish a larger on-scene commander platform. So what we talked about is the Hammerhead would probably take over, which is just, what we talk about is on-scene commander platform. We talk about who can be out there for the next month if they need to be, to provide a presence, to provide security, to provide any type of logistical support. And the way that that works is on-scene sustainability. So we just go up, and if the hammerhead was there for a couple of weeks, we moved into maybe some of the pollution response and salvage recovery operations. We start talking about some of the larger buoy tenders in Newport. You know, some of those ships can be, you know, they can be anchored there for, you know, self-sustaining for a couple of months at a time. So we just need to start looking long-term and really coordinate our efforts to be in concert with the salvage and recovery operations that are going on. Another thing too is verify person accountability system accuracy and establish plan for divers. Because I think divers, because of the nature of the scenario and the ferry starting to sink, enlist a little bit as it kind of rests on the shoal, the need for divers was going to be kind of more and more of a priority here. So, and then establish a plan to board the ferry and account for remaining victims. Establish safety and security zone until salvage plan is completed. Really didn't go past this. Is there a next? Yeah, that was essentially it. That was kind of an overview of the drill. And I don't know if Captain, did I miss anything? I don't know what. You know, I'm not sure what else is relevant to talk about here. So, is there any questions about any of this? Yes, sir.
Chief, I was just wondering what the MARSAC level designation is up there.
You click it, it's a hyperlink. It'll explain it.
Yeah, if we have internet access. That's fine. So the MARSEC level, just to explain that, that's our maritime security level, okay? And what that has to do with is, you know, what level of security awareness are we at as a Coast Guard, and what level of security awareness is industry at, okay? It's really what this pertains to is industry. So MARSEC level 1 means the level for which minimum appropriate security measures shall be maintained at all times. That is our day-to-day operations. That's what we're doing today. That's what we've been doing for a number of years now. Level 2 means the level for which appropriate additional protective security measures shall be maintained for a period of time as a result of heightened risk of a transportation security incident. Do we think that the MARSEC level changed when this incident happened? Certainly it did, okay? And I don't think we got into MARSEC level 3 for a period of time, but I think we sustained at MARSEC level 2 for the period, or for the duration of this exercise. And then MARSEC level 3 means the level for which further specific protective security measures shall be maintained for a limited period of time when a transportation security incident is probable, imminent, or has occurred, although it may not be possible to identify a specific target. Okay? Simple?
Very nice.
Okay. Any other questions? Comments? Nothing. That's all I have. Thanks, Kim. That's it.
That's great, Chief.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Thanks, Mark. Yep, sure.
The chief may have failed to mention this was a terrorist type of an attack, and we may have that, he may have left that out on purpose, and I don't mean to
Okay.
to kill you, but I mean that's hence the Marine security levels that they go up for that reason. Sort of like something like if 9/11 came, we stopped flying. The Marine security levels, they would enhance certain rules and regulations on the waterfalls and waters. But it was a great exercise, I think, as the chief mentioned. It got us to see what would happen because we're used to operating on land-based operations, and we kind of know how we would handle a mass casualty incident dealing with the land. But this was kind of a joint effort. It was the Coast Guard was running the show. It was their exercise, and they were in command on the water. But then we all know from our NIMS or ICS training, we'd have different sets of area commands. We'd have incident commands. And the chief brought up a good point, the interoperability of communications. Whenever you have an exercise, that's always an issue, is communications. And that's the real need for the incident command post, whether it's a one unified command post or area, different commands. Other people can talk to their organizations, who hence can pass on the information. Ideally, we'd all be on the same radio frequencies, but I don't know if any of us will ever see that in our careers. We may. But I think it was a really good exercise, and I know if anybody else that was there that has any input or any suggestions. Captain Gifford, the chief mentions Captain Gifford. It's a little confusing. It's Captain Gifford, who we all know, and there's also a Captain Gifford in the Coast Guard, who's in charge of the Coast Guard station. So I think they have a little fight over there down who's in charge or who the real Captain Gifford is. But did you take anything away there? Greg? I was saying Greg instead of Captain Gifford. How's that?
Great exercise.
It really was. We had, I don't know, 130, 140 people or something like that. It was very well attended. There was assets there that we would see from the military, assets from the government, FBI, hence the type of a terrorist attack, where we may not normally see those kind of assets, but it's great to know that they're there if we need them. So it was a great exercise. And I'm hoping we can take some of that. I mean, we talked, the chief mentioned Mr. Murphy, who was one of the evaluators at our regional exercise that we had over at the Mass Maritime. And he was one of the key instrument people putting this one on. And he said he picked up a lot from our exercise. So I'm hoping between these two exercises that we've done, maybe whenever we have one of our tabletops, we can kind of mirror some of it on a lot smaller scale for us locally. But there's definitely some good points. Last month, I don't know if everybody remember, we had a chance to, we asked folks to take a survey in regards to the LEPC and some of the things we do. And there's some copies up here that Kim put out. But we've got a lot of good input. You know, some good boy letters, some little bit of criticism, which we take as constructive criticism. But we had also some good points. And I'll read over a couple of them briefly, not to take up too much time. But one of the first questions we asked, if someone asked in the community asked you what is the LEPC, how would you respond? And instead of reading them all, I'm going to read the ones I liked that I thought were the key. I'll read some of the bad ones too. But one of the local emergency planning committee is a multidisciplinary group comprised of various members of the community, including municipal, government, corporate, private, and public volunteers that work together to plan best practices and emergency responses to all types of disasters and community events. I think that kind of explained it pretty much to a T. I said there's all sorts of other ones that folks can read in there. We asked the number 2 question, what were some of the strengths of our local LEPC? We had a breadth through the community of leadership, public and private. The depth is evidenced by the skills and energy of the workers and volunteers within each of the subdivisions represented by the LEPC members. And we go on. Number 3 was what are the weaknesses of the LEPC? You always try and ask the weaknesses to go with the strengths. We have one said not enough town department heads attending the meeting, as well as maybe representatives from the Board of Selectmen. I didn't write that. No regional, now regionalized is more bureaucracy. One of the questions we asked was about joining the REPC, and I see that, and I'm hoping all the good parts outweigh the bureaucracy, because really nobody likes that too much. Number 4, we asked which tabletop exercises do you recall to be our most informative or useful? One of the folks said any and all the hurricane exercises, because that's one of our most likely exercises. Those where we actually set up and run disaster scenarios complete with equipment setup and mock response. We hope to have a good planned exercise coming up maybe in November. Question 5 is if you were given the opportunity to plan a tabletop exercise, what would it be? And we had a couple of suggestions. Was a nuclear emergency from Plymouth. We've covered just about every case. Practicing, just keep practicing the same was another answer. A real-time scenario setting up an EOC. Number 6 was please list 3 areas of emergency preparedness which you'd dedicate more time on planning. One was a drinking water emergency, which we've had the unfortunate luck to experience already in the town. Again, the nuclear emergency at Plymouth and hurricanes were the key ones. 7 was what areas of the community do you feel we should spend more time and effort to reach with our preparedness? Many folks said just residents in general using the media, using a lot of things that I'm not that familiar with, so I would probably need help using Twitter, Facebook, things like that. I've been told by my daughters that we should have utilized those resources during the water issue we had last year. And it probably would have been a good idea, because that's how they heard about it, was from their friends on those types of media. But that's why we need some assistance with that. They also said get in touch with the elderly and the young children. That's kind of who we always do, at least in the fire prevention side of it. Number 8 was how can we improve, how we can educate our community on preparedness. And again, perhaps a quarterly newspaper article, more use of the newspaper, more use of local TV, which we try and use, and a public outreach directed at personnel and local responses to specific situations. Number 9 is how can we improve our LEPC operations? And one of the answers was operations is not a component of the LEPC. This is somebody that's very right online, right on target. The LEPC should not be involved in the operational end of emergencies. Monthly meetings and pre-planning opportunities are the place for LEPC. And that's 100% correct. But it's just, I kind of meant when we said operations of how we operate here and how we do. But technically when we do switch over to an emergency operations center program, many of the people here are also going to be involved in the EOC. So I think they intertwine a little bit. And then we asked finally about becoming part of the REPC was a good idea, and 80% of the people thought it was, and 20% didn't think it was, mostly because of the bureaucracy. So I think I appreciate everybody taking the time that took the survey, and I think getting that feedback will help us try and form better, have a better committee and a better response of what we're doing. So we're hoping October 3rd is the next REPC meeting that I'll be attending down in Harwich, and that's one of the topics on that is going to be regarding response to a nuclear event at the Plymouth nuclear plant. And I think it's going to intertwine some of the Cape communities, how they're going to be getting involved. Thanks to some of the committee members that we have, we've gotten some input back, and they've actually gotten the DISC and the emergency evacuation plan for the within the 10-mile zone around Plymouth. So we've gone over that, and the group that was putting an article in for the town meeting are going to withdraw that based on hopefully that we can work together in this committee so that we don't have to get the politicians in the town involved and Jewish through our planning committee and stages here. And I think that would be a very informative meeting. I believe Director Schwartz from MEMA is going to be there. We have a shelter update. The shelter is still an ongoing process. We're still working on fine-tuning a couple little things to finish everything that we've been trying to do out there. And other than that, I think it's going pretty good. Our last town engineer, Peter McConney, put together our latest plan here that actually has all the outlets that were tested to see what will operate on generator power and what I mean, they are supposed to be marked, but on one of the Monday nights last month, they were out there testing it and actually seeing which ones worked and which ones didn't. So that's a plan that we'll have that'll be very, very helpful. So is there anything else, Peter, for the shelter issues that I know you've been instrumental in that?
Yeah, I know.
Dan, Helen?
I know we've been looking at the, I think, working with Dan and Helen, I think we wanted to do with the shelter can up there, the container up there that has all the supplies.
Connex box, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if you wanted to briefly went through that. We ran into the rainstorm up there. If you wanted to run through that, but of moving some of the supplies into the school.
We did, and we were fortunate that Mark Dupree and the school folks gave us some room inside the building that we're going to store some of the equipment inside, so we won't have that problem of having to get it from the outside in the Connex box. We'll have enough to set up for 50 people right off the bat, which is going to be very helpful. Very helpful. Yes?
Can you give an overview on the meeting that we had with the senior center?
Oh, we met just a few days ago with some of the Council of Aging organization, and they're going to hopefully start attending some of the meetings on a more regular basis too here. But we met with them to discuss some of the issues of the senior citizens in the community and to help them out with emergency planning for those folks. Because I know we were thinking, but I think the stats we have are there's some 30-some-odd thousand people in Falmouth, and out of that 30,000, 10,000 are senior citizens, so a good 1/3. And with the stats they gave us, they said they expect that by the year 2020 to increase by 48%. So say another 5,000. See, I don't know if that's a combination of the baby boom and things and all this, or just because of where we live, but it's a big event, and it's a big issue we have to deal with during an emergency. Is dealing with the old folks and getting them settled, and maybe getting them moved to the shelter. And that's something we have worked out with the transportation folks. So But they do have a lot of needs, and we'll be working closely with them to develop some plans. Miss anything? Yes, Paul?
Mark, from the school side, we've tried to get together the plans for all the schools. Peter has come up with the plan for the high school,
Yeah.
and we've included that for both the police and fire. So they have the floor plans for all the schools, and we're updating the contact numbers.
Great, I think we have some electronically too, don't we, Bob? Everything but the high school, maybe?
But the high school isn't electronic.
Still new?
And Peter had a good suggestion, make it big enough so you can see it, you know.
Which
and-
you just did.
Which you just did, but we have that in a plastic sleeve
Yeah.
for both the police and fire. And I've talked to Boyd about some issues in the schools, because we'll be having some lockdowns coming up and some of the other issues. So we've tried to coordinate some of the activities with the fire department.
Well, we appreciate it. I mean, that's definitely some concerns we have in the schools. Just a few updates. Craig, can you raise your hand? Craig O'Malley is the new EMS supervisor in the town of Falmouth. He's taking over for Joe Denick. I saw him running around here. Tomorrow's his last actual official day of working. But Craig's taking over, and he'll be attending some of our meetings and dealing with a lot of our situations, dealing with the hospital, dealing with the nursing homes and things like that. And also another notice is Peter McConaughey is now the town engineer that we've known him for the town engineer, but for the last 3 years he's been in an acting position, and now it's a full-time position, finally. Pete's been Pete's been great helping us with the shelter, with any type of aspects of emergency planning, and we really appreciate it. Now that he's permanent, we can expect even more help. Or maybe less. Huh? But I think that's, is there anybody else have anything? Rich, can I introduce you? Rich Weatherby, I don't know, have you been to a meeting yet?
No, it's not.
This is your first, this is Rich Weatherby from, I should have had everybody going on, so that's okay. From Falmouth Hospital. And he's going to be involved, hopefully be involved with us and we'll deal with the emergency management planning for the hospital.
Thank you.
Thank you. So our next meeting is going to be on October 25th, and we're hoping to have some sort of a large table, not large, but a tabletop exercise in November. So if people could, if anybody has any thoughts, I've got a couple of good thoughts on that, but I don't know if anybody else has any suggestions for a tabletop exercise. Okay. Joe, before you sneak away, could you say goodbye?
It's been a pleasure.
Joe's heading to Florida like in 2 days.
Yeah, so-
We'll never ever see him again.
Unless you see me on the Weather Channel at hurricanes.
Can we call for hurricane?
But it's been a pleasure working with this group, and you know, I started out with this group with Chief Broder, who did it all on his own with Kim's help, and at times he didn't even know what to say when he got up here, but it's become a pretty good.
Thought of something.
Yeah, he always thought of something. That was a scary thing.
Yeah.
And it became a pretty cohesive group, and we got a lot done, and we're a long way now. And in Mark's leadership, I think you'll have, when the big one hits, we'll be ready, which is important. That's what we're all here for. So
So we go.
we go. Thanks.
Just on that vein, tomorrow morning, right in this room from like 9 to 12, we're having like Joe's it's actually his last day of work is tomorrow. We're having like a farewell coffee and breakfast type thing, so if you're in the neighborhood between 9 and 12 and you want to stop by, stop by. Or if you want to go this evening from, yeah. Anyway. I know, I forgot.
Not anymore.
Not anymore. I think that's really all we have for the day, and I appreciate everybody coming. We'll have an update in regards to the, I'll give you an update on that LEPC meeting, see if there's any updates on that. I know you folks that are new last month, do you have any input? I don't want to say we have subcommittees yet, but I'm thinking of doing subcommittees, but if there would be, there'd be a nuclear power plant one, you guys would be it. But you have anything to bring up?
Nothing real new. We
No.
just say we're glad to be welcomed here,
Yeah.
and hope we can put some realistic things in place.
I hope we can. No, I appreciate the drawing the article. I know it was probably a big thing for you to get involved, but if we don't perform to your expectations and make some plans, there's always Springtown meeting. Yes, Kim?
The ICS 300 cancellation.
Class, yeah, I don't know if anybody has signed
I
up.
forwarded that
There's
email
been a lot
to
of
the
NEMA
LEPC.
classes coming down. If anybody's not up to the speed on their NIMS or the ICS and they'd like to, it's very easy to sign up on the internet. Yes, Craig?
They canceled the one that was supposed to be for next weekend. It's rescheduled for December.
Is it?
It's a Saturday, Sunday, Monday.
And
In
I know
December.
it's a big commitment, and a lot of those things can be done online, but it's sort of good training to have if you're interested in the emergency management stuff. Gives you an idea of the format we use, the ICS and all that. All right, well, thank you very much. Plan to see you next month. Thank you.